Hey everyone, Sky here to discuss The League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Yes, it's a DC product. I'll talk about it in a minute. Starring Sean Connery, Nasruddin Shah, forgive me if I said that wrong, Peter Wilson, Tony Curran, Shane West, and Stuart Townsend, and directed by Stephen Norrington, the Blade director. I know, it's kind of weird. Now, it is a comic book by Alan Moore, who I will be getting to also next week when I get to Watchmen, and he also did the V for Vendetta, as I already reviewed earlier this year. So, why this? Because it is based on a comic book from DC, but let's see if it lives up to the comic book compared to a movie, I'll say. Let's get into this. An evil enemy called the Phantom, yes, it's spelled with an F, comes in with a tank and take money from the bank in 1899 in London. And this plot I can't understand, and it's going to be hard to analyze it. And I already know this movie is going to be messy from the get-go. In Kenya, an Englishman comes into a bar to find Alan Quatermain, played by Sean Connery. And to recruit Quatermain and Sean Connery. Now, am I dreaming, or is this man too old to do his fighting scenes? And this is going to be a problem throughout the movie, but I'll give him credit for commanding this mess of a movie. And I'm looking forward to reviewing him again next time with the James Bond series. But for now, this is his worst performance yet to date. And this is the movie that made him retire from acting. Oh boy. Quatermain meets a man called Only M, played by Richard Roxburgh, along with Captain Nemo, played by Nasruddin Shah, forgive me if I said that wrong, when the movie first came out, I thought it was named after this movie, which came out the same summer as this movie, by the way, back in 2003. But it's a fictional name of a character in a book called 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea by Jules Verne, and an invisible man named Rodney Skinner, played by Tony Curran, who I thought was the funniest character in the whole movie, and vampire Nina Harker, played by Peter Wilson. And this movie is all over the place with these characters, as they're terrible people in this movie. And they go to Dorian Gray, played by Stuart Townsend, who is well known for this god mess of a movie as well. Who's probably the worst character in this movie, but this movie is very badly acted, I must say. The League are encountered by the Phantom and have a brief action sequence with Tom Sawyer, played by Shane West, who I know from this movie a couple of years earlier. And he's not great in this movie either. And while they fight, Dorian gets shot many times and stabs the soldier, his shooter, and says, "I'm complicated." Just, ugh! These lines said by these actors are so bad. They go to France to get Dr. Jekyll, aka Mr. Hyde, played by Jason Fleming, who does look the part as Dr. Jekyll, but Mr. Hyde's face did look like Napoleon Dynamite, which did come out the next year, and I felt like with that face was pretty damn distracting to me. I do like the submarine. They go place to place, and I thought the design was pretty damn cool looking, but it doesn't make me help but wonder, why is this acting so bad? The plot is a mess, and why do they have nothing to connect with me on? And it's very poor storytelling and writing, and I have no one to care for whatsoever. The actors are failing to connect with their characters, and I don't understand this plot, like I said before, but kind of like mixing these iconic characters from American fictional story history in a comic book form, but it's fine. But as a movie, it doesn't work well to mix some of things like Alan Quartermain, the Invisible Man, Tom Sawyer, and Captain Nemo. It's too much of a messy point of a movie, I must say. In Venice, the League arrives and tries to stop an explosion of a bomb, which they're too late to stop. They have to stop every other bomb from exploding, and they use Captain Nemo's automobile. And the problem with that scene is Alan, Tom, and Mina, with Dorian, are in the car driving, and there's no streets in Venice, keep in mind, and no car driving either, and the fact they're driving the car is baffling and unrealistic. Quartermain fights the Phantom and takes the mask off and reveals it's M. Meanwhile, Dorian betrays the League and a crew member says it was Dorian, not Skinner, because they thought it was Skinner at first, and it's obvious M was the traitor because it's Richard Roxburgh, and he plays bad guys like here in this other movie I'm about to bring up. And of course Dorian, he has a suspicious look on him as they record a message and blows up the submarine, and Mr. Hyde saves the crew's life, which was way too convenient for me. The League finds Skinner in the snow near M's factory, and they get there with Mr. Hyde and Captain Nemo to free the prisoners while Mr. Hyde fights a giant enemy. Meanwhile, Quartermain and Sawyer find them, and Sawyer ends up fighting an invisible man that's not Skinner. And Sawyer face him. They face him, and with Sawyer shooting him from 900 yards. Skinner puts dynamite near the fuel and fights another invisible man, as I brought up earlier, and defeats him while putting himself on fire. And Mina fights Dorian and completes his picture while stabbed in the heart, and it kills him by completing the picture. And Quartermain dies while in battle with M, aka Professor James Moriarty. Does that sound familiar? From Sherlock Holmes? As he gets killed by Sawyer, and they bury Quartermain, and I didn't like that climax at all. The fact that it's a Sherlock Holmes villain, and what a bad way to retire from movies for Sean Connery. I just felt really bad for him. Now it's time for the rating. I'll give this movie a 2.8 out of 10. This is a messy movie with a messy plot, no characters to connect with, and the acting is terrible. But I do like the submarine design. I thought it looked cool, but it works when you make this into a comic book. But as a movie, it's a failure. And I cannot recommend this to be Sean Connery's retirement of a movie. I just can't do it. Like, he needs to end on a better note than this. But he's already retired, so I'm not going to control that. So I'd like to thank you guys for joining me, and next week I will be back with Watchmen. And until next time, and the game is on.